we're talking about a very special event here in Dublin. It's called Investicon. We're running an in-person event on the Irish Stock Exchange on Thursday, August 21st. Very simple. We're just assembling a panel of investing masters in some very disparate areas. Obviously, we have stocks, we have ETFs, but we also have whiskey and AI as well. So it's going to be a bit of everything in there. And then they're going to give us their 3 top investing ideas for 2026 and beyond. Emmet, how are we getting on?
How you doing, Mike? How are things?
I'm good. I'm a bit slow moving after the long weekend. I actually had an extra long weekend, so everything is a bit more laborious today. But you had a big weekend. Noted gardener extraordinaire Emmet Savage was quoted in the Irish Independent.
Yeah, actually, of all the things, I really should have plugged Investicon, which we're going to talk about. But you're right. I was at a big Irish event known as Bloom, which, for all intent and purposes, is a giant Chelsea flower show kind of day out in Ireland. And it wouldn't usually be my first choice.
You don't be humble, Emmet. Come on, you were queuing up, waiting for it to open.
Couldn't wait. Yeah, it's it's a gardening show, but it's actually done in Ireland's Phoenix Park, which is the largest public park in Europe. It's a giant place. So it occupies probably only about 5% of the Phoenix Park, and went in on Friday, sunny day like you. I took an extra long weekend. I didn't work on Friday. I went in with my wife, and it's kind of a mixture of 3 things from what I could observe. There are a whole pile of model gardens where you walk around, what we would call back gardens in Ireland. So at the back of most houses, there's a small garden and a few model gardens. Then must be 100 food trucks. And then the third thing is garden offices. So I kind of walked around it. It was very enjoyable. It was a kind of taste of summer. But a journalist asked me, what was how am I enjoying it? I went, oh, very nice, lovely. It's way bigger than the first time I came, which was 10 years ago or whatever. And she said, what's your favorite thing about it? And I said, sitting down. I was over in that tent over there with my wife at a speech about something or another. I don't know what it was, but I was enjoying the sit down. And then when she bought all these flowers, I sat under that tree, and now I'm looking forward to going back to the car for another sit down. And she just stared at me because this really wasn't the quote she needed. I thought it was the quote she needed. I thought it was original. And then the next day in the Irish Independent, it kind of quoted the stuff I said that was canned response. Yeah, it's great. It's big. I love the flowers. So anyway, yeah, that was my lovely day out on Friday.
Yeah, getting misquoted. You should send in a letter.
I probably did say the flowers are lovely or whatever it was that she quoted me on, but
said what they wanted to say and then said what you meant.
She didn't
after.
want to talk about it. And one lad was looking forward to sitting down, which was me. After walking effectively 20 kilometers through flowers and stuff, I was like, just let me sit down. I had enough of this. Carry on.
That's so bad. Okay, we got a special episode this week. We're talking about a very special event here in Dublin. It's called Investicon. So this podcast is dedicated to unveiling that. So we're running an in-person event on the Irish Stock Exchange on Thursday, August 21st. Very simple. We're just assembling a panel of investing masters in some very disparate areas. Obviously, we have stocks, we have ETFs, but we also have whiskey and AI as well. So it's going to be a bit of everything in there. And then they're going to give us their 3 top investing ideas for 2026 and beyond. So you're going to get a lot of opinions, a lot of very unique opinions, I suppose, beyond what we usually do at MyWallSt, but still have that core focus of investing there in the heart of it. I've kind of only been loosely involved so far. I've made a lot of promises to do a lot of things, but I haven't really gotten into the nitty gritty of it yet. But I also want to know really what's happening, who's going to be speaking, and kind of the full details. So, Emma, let's start with how this concept started. How did you come up with the idea for Investicon?
Well, yeah, good introduction. You're right. 21st of August, which is a Thursday, and happens to be 2 days before a big football game here in Ireland, as in American football, as we would call it. But the genesis of the idea, Mike, for Investicon really kind of comes from the beginnings of MyWallSt, because as a handful of our listeners will know, MyWallSt started out with an advert in the Engineer's Journal, because at that time I was an engineer. I was never formally an engineer, but still, I I was in the Irish Engineering Institute, and I put an ad in the Engineers Journal saying, if you want to learn everything you need to know about stock investing, come to Bewley's Hotel of Ballsbridge in Dublin, bring a check for €200, pay on the way out if you liked it. And that event was the birth of MyWallSt. And a few years went by, and the idea started to take shape and got bigger, bringing us to this day, which is, here we are, early June 2025. Well, for years after that event, after I had the in-person event, and several events actually in the hotels around in Dublin, we used to do, I used to put out on Twitter, hey, let's all meet for drinks. In usually Grogan's of South William Street, which is a favourite pub of mine and many Dubliners. And I name a date and go, let's all meet up in this pub at this time, and drinks are on me. And we kind of, the event got a little bigger. It started out with a table of 5 of us, and then there was 2 tables of 10 of us. And every year it got a little bigger. And we usually did it around Christmas. And it was very nice to connect with other investors. And it got bigger and bigger. And in fact, it's something I'm really looking forward to reinstating, because I just love meeting people, and especially like-minded people. The one thing about when you get stock investors together is you find a very common way of thinking, and people with the same aspirations as you, and upwardly mobile and thinkers. So I absolutely love meeting other stock investors. So that was the Twitter drinks, as it became known as. But then COVID came along and broke a few habits, including the habit of the Twitter drinks, which really would need to be renamed as the X drinks now, which just doesn't sound right. So as you well know, Mike, about 3.5 years ago, I think it was November, maybe October, November, about 3.5 years ago, we held a Horizon members event in 4 Dame Lane, which is a pub. And our friend Bill Mann flew over from America. It was a huge success. It was very boozy. We threw our card behind the bar and said, right, if you're a member of Horizon, come meet us. Let's have a few drinks and let's talk about great stocks. And it was a great buzz. And you and I and Bill and a few of the other MyWallSt team, we sat on high stools at the top of the room, and we spoke about our favorite investments at that time. And then the next year, 1 year later, we ran the Horizon event again. And it was a little more upscale. This time we went for the big room in the Westbury Hotel in Dublin, in the centre of Dublin. And it was the earliest days of Christmas. The Christmas tree was up. It was a rainy night. The room was filled, and we had another great conversation. Again, Bill Mann joined us, and Chris Hill joined us this time, voice of an investing generation. And we had another great event. And then last November, as you know well, we also had the most recent Horizon members event, and it was on the floor of the Irish Stock Exchange, which is now known as the Euronext Dublin, but better known as the Irish Stock Exchange. And each one of those events connected people. It created a sense of buzz and togetherness and common interest and networking and all that kind of stuff. And after all of these events, Mike, I was left with this lingering feeling that we've learned enough to do something that should be wider in scope, beyond stocks, and that is beyond the walled garden, if you like, of being a Horizon member. That anyone should, have an event like this available to them. So John Tyrrell, my co-founder, and I sat down and we hatched a plan.
Okay, yeah, and I completely agree, because I've been to the last 4 that you
You
mentioned
hosted
there.
them.
I hosted them, yeah. I think it was my first public speaking event. The pints
Wow.
definitely helped.
Wow.
But there's a very real sense of quite a small community in Ireland of investors, and that's obviously growing as investing becomes more and more popular. But it very much felt like we were connecting people with similar interests that hadn't really had an opportunity to discuss these kind of things in a group of this size before. And I think that's where we're going to next, where the kind of the seed, I suppose, of making something bigger and more expansive and more inclusive. And so I think this is where you're going to get to next, where we're talking about the back of the envelope plan, I suppose, for what Investicon is.
Yeah, well, Investicon it's all kind of, most things you achieve come from something you've done in the past, or several things you've done in the past and converged to create something new. And a few years ago, I was chatting with the founder of Web Summit, I met him and a couple of other Irish entrepreneurs, and we sat in a very fancy room in the Shelburne Hotel and had a very nice meal and spoke about polite businessy things. And anyway, one of the things that he said to me was that the reason that the Web Summit grew into the giant that it is today, and for people that are unfamiliar with Web Summit, it's a bit like South by Southwest, but it's the Europe equivalent, and it's a huge, huge, huge event, and its name says what it does. But what he said to me is one of the reasons that that organization grew into the giant that it is today is that it started small. It started in a Dublin pub, and everyone loves coming to Dublin, I think, and we are famous for our pubs. And when you combine um, that kind of logic with the learned lesson from small town politics, like small town politicians in Ireland know that if you're going to have a town hall or a meeting of people, you don't really want to be in a room that's 70% full. You want it in a smaller room that's packed. And there's this kind of logic that if you're driving or walking through a small town and there's people spilling out of a small pub, everyone wants to go in to see what's happening. You know, crowds breed crowds. So when you combine, you know, the lessons I have learned through my life with MyWallSt, with the insights that were provided by the founder of Web Summit, with just general observations, you know, we started to hatch a plan that we wanted to do something that was small but was brilliant. And Investicon is our first effort to create something of really distinct value that just is not being done in the same way anywhere else in the world. So I'm going to hit you, Mike, with a one question quiz. You won't believe this because, well, let me hit you with the question first. Okay. Excluding World War II, what was the single biggest event that caused US citizens to leave American soil? What one event other than the war was the one that had that Americans getting onto airplanes?
A single event.
Mm-hmm.
Does like, well, I suppose if World War II counts, then I don't know, the Iraq War or something.
No. Pretty good guess, though. I'd say it's in the top five. But the second biggest after World War II was the Notre Dame versus Navy football game that happened in Dublin in
What?
20 in 2023 in the Aviva Stadium, where I think the Fighting Irish defeated Navy by 42 to 3 points. But
Wait a minute.
American
That's
football.
the second
Yeah.
biggest. Like, that's unreal.
Event that more people left America for that football game, Notre Dame versus Navy, than virtually anything else. I think if we take wars out of the equation, it's a clear number one. So that was
That's mad.
uh, yeah, and that is really the reason I bring that statistic into our conversation is that John Tyrrell, my co-founder, decided to rock on in and meet the Aer Lingus College Classic people, the team behind this annual football game. And he came out of that meeting with a partnership with the Aer Lingus College Classic. And it gave birth to Investicon because we realized we had a great partner. And that event that I mentioned at the top of the podcast, the American football game 2 days after Investicon, well, there's going to be a buzz in Dublin. Actually, I think in the same weekend, Robbie Williams is also singing his guts out in Crow Park. So there's kind of there's going to be a lot of bustle in Dublin City. So while we are doing Investicon on Thursday, 21st of August on the floor of the Irish Stock Exchange, it's 2 days before Farmageddon. So Farmageddon is this year's giant American football clash between Iowa and Kansas State universities, which I believe promises to be a mighty clash because I was at the kickoff of the event in Dublin there several weeks ago from the Aer Lingus College Classic team, and the great and good of Dublin business was there, and it was kicked off by Simon Harris, who's the Taoiseach, the second most senior politician in the country, former Taoiseach, he was once the most senior politician in the country. And he stood up and said to a room full of people, and I was standing at the back leaning on the wall, propping it up, making sure it didn't fall over. And Simon Harris said he was delighted to see the the growth in the Aer Lingus College Classic game, and this year especially excited to see it collaborate with Investicon. And I stood up straight, going, "What did he say?" So someone had briefed him that this thing was happening while it was still kind of will we won't me mode. So I figured, oh look, if our head of state is talking about it, we may as well do it. So it's a Big 12 conference. It's the 10th ever college football game held here in Ireland, and they go back quite a way. I'll leave you to Google to figure out when American football games were first played in Ireland, but under the Aer Lingus College Classic guys. It's only been going a couple of years. And just while I'm on it, out of respect for our partners in Aer Lingus, tickets for that game are still available at Ticketmaster, specifically ticketmaster.ie/college football. So we built Investicon.ie, Irish domains, webs are .ie. We built Investicon.ie, and we set it free on the internet, and it is live today.
Just on that as well, you mentioned, I think it was the Notre Dame game. It was one of the college football classics in recent memory anyways. And the Aviva's internet famously blacked out. Did you hear about this?
No, I don't recall this.
So all food and drink at the game was free. And a college football game can go on for 3 or 4 hours. I'd say it was the drunkest collection of 60, 70,000 people in the world.
Free drink at a stadium full of Irish people.
Yeah.
And Americans.
Yeah.
Here.
So
honestly, I can't believe the state wasn't bankrupted with
that. they needed a bailout from taxpayers.
Hello, Germany. We're in trouble again. Our internet went off air.
So
I didn't know that.
But that's a tangent anyways, and maybe that's a boon. Maybe it'll happen again at the next one, so buy your tickets. But
oh yeah, exactly. There you go, folks. You might get free food and drink for the whole game.
So before we discuss the speakers, let's just talk about the topics that are going to be on. So we mentioned in the kind of intro, obviously stocks and shares is our bread and butter, but we're moving a bit beyond just that to AI and whiskey as well, which is quite an interesting interesting topic to cover, because it's something that has been making inroads in the investing community, but not something I know very little to nothing about.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, I'm really excited about the whiskey end of it, but as you and I know, we can talk stocks, and we do talk stocks, and have done so at a pile of live events at this stage, since that baptismal fire that I didn't even realize you'd never spoken in public, let alone about stock. But you and I are approaching 300 podcasts, 270 podcasts. So it's an obvious topic that the guys behind MyWallSt at Investicon are going to talk about stocks. But as you say, AI and whiskey are almost as opposite as two investing categories or themes as you can get. One is effectively brand new, and the other is as old as history and records themselves. And, AI is one of the fastest growing sectors. I don't even know if we call AI a sector. It's the fastest moving movement. Is it tech? It's very even there you go. But AI,
call it a wave.
It's a wave. Yeah, it is. It is ultimately destined to be bigger than the internet, which sounds nonsensical, but it is. And in 2023 alone, $40 billion was invested in generative AI startups. I don't have the 2024 number, but I guess it's at least
10x it, I'd say.
Actually, probably. You're right. So, I mean, if 40 billion went in 2023, I don't think it would be any too much of a leap to think over $100 billion went in last calendar year. So really, we talk about AI all the time, and it is relentless, and it's touching everything from medical diagnostics and trading. Every single aspect of humanity is slowly getting taken over or augmented in some way by AI. And the upside of this tech is massive, and for a lot of the opportunities, so is the risk. So that was a very interesting area that I don't think many people would need much prompting to buy into the idea that we're in the earliest days of AI. It is the birth of the next thing. Whereas whiskey is, as you said, the complete opposite. It's slow. It's tied to Ireland and Scotland, and it's a traditional business. And we could talk about a rare casket of Middleton, very rare, or a bottle of 1960s Bowmore, and how they can appreciate 10 or 20%, although, neither of us have any expertise in the area. But what I think anyone with a head on their shoulders realizes that whiskey is a collectible asset, and one that you could very conceivably enjoy at a later point. But whiskey, it isn't about disruption. It's opposite of AI. It's about scarcity and craftsmanship and the ingredients and the heritage and the story and the bottling and the scent and all the rest. Do you know, years ago I went to the Irish, before I started, I haven't drunk alcohol in about 10 years, but before then I went to the Irish Whiskey Appreciation Society's annual hoo-ha, which was in the Gresham Hotel. And entry was like €50 or something, and you had to be a member of the Irish Whiskey Appreciation Club, Society, whatever. And we went up to the grand dining room, ballroom of the Gresham Hotel. I don't even know if it's there anymore, on O'Connell Street. And in front of us was were 6 empty tumblers, glasses, and a kind of thespian from Trinity College was at the top of the room, and very well spoken and highly educated on the subject of whiskey. And a person would go around the room, people would go around the room and put a shot in your first glass. Actually, no, I think they were pre-filled. You're told not to touch them, and you could observe the different color of all of them. So what kind of struck me, 3 kind of things struck me. The first was how many adjectives you can use to describe whiskey. Like our friend at the top of the room was talking about, now smell it, and it smells like burnt leather with a touch of wet dog. And you're like, oh yeah, now smell the next one. It's like a tin of biscuits. You're like, oh yeah, you're totally getting into it. But as we drank our way through the samples, the second thing I noticed is the room got louder with each successive taste. The noise level and the kind of whispering turned into man whispering, where it's kind of talking like this, but the volume is still the same. And by the time we drank the 6th sample, it was properly a night out with these lads. And I say lads because, as far as I recall, it seemed to be a man only thing. I'm not, so anyway, I won't even go down. But the third thing I'll tell you about that particular event was that the last one we drank, our friend at the top of the room, who was telling us to hold us in our mouth, said, you're holding between 150 and 200 euros worth of whiskey in your mouth at the moment. These bottles were procured by a collector who didn't want them just wasted, uh, with someone who didn't know what they were drinking, and wanted to lead us to a place. And each of the bottles cost thousands each. And it was a very nice, I suppose, introduction for me into the complex and intricate world of whiskey. And I think it is something that will be of real interest to Investicon attendees, because we're not only going to learn which bottles are going to appreciate the most, we're going to learn which caskets are great investments too.
Yeah, and how to invest as well. It's not like you go and buy a bottle of Redbreast in the supermarket and just don't touch it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Borrow your uncle's van and rock on up. I'm going to buy 2 of them caskets there and bring it home and tell your family, like, I'm going to put these barrels in the corner of the kitchen. Don't be touching them. And everyone is looking at you going, what are you talking about? You can't leave that. How long is that going to be there for? 15 year.
Yeah.
15 year. I'm going to open that in 15 year. So, yeah, you're right. How do you invest in a casket of whiskey? Because, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so whiskey and AI, why pair them at Investicon?
Well, because they're diametric opposites, and I think most people can immediately get a sense that they are extremely investable, and that if done correctly, both will offer, well, AI offers wild upside with high risk. And I think whiskey offers pretty good upside with ostensibly no risk, low risk. Well, we'll find out on the day.
It depends if you like whiskey. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, it survived. It survived 15 years. That's
okay. Well, maybe that's the other thing. But
yeah.
the worst thing, you just get a nice bottle of whiskey for yourself. Okay, so this feels like a good segue to go into the speakers involved. But before we do that, let's talk logistics. So, how much are tickets and where can you get them?
Yeah, well, so very simple, very simple. Remembering that our plan is just to make this a success. When I go back to that advice I got from the Web Summit team, we just want this to be a success. So a success this year for us is measured by attendance and feedback. So we can do something way bigger next year with the Aer Lingus College Classic team and for years to come. And we looked at the cost of hiring the exchange floor, the Irish Stock Exchange floor, and flying in the speakers, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and all the associated costs of bringing in an array of the world's best in these areas. And the rock bottom ticket price for us is €449. However, the early bird tickets, we have a handful of early bird tickets at €399, which went live on investicon.ie this morning.
Very good. Okay. The event it's pretty tight. It's from 2 p.m. to 5:45 on the 21st August 2025. Okay. Tell me about the speakers now.
Well, the first person I reached out to when John rang me and said, yeah, look, Aer Lingus College, I've just done a deal with them. I was like, whoa there, cowboy. I didn't even know we were doing this. I pitched it as an idea, not go off and meet Aer Lingus College Classic guys and make it a reality. And then a week later, they tarnished Simon Harris telling everyone that this thing is on like Donkey Kong. So anyway, so when all of that happened, I reached out to David Gardner, who is a lot of our listeners will know as a co-founder of the Motley Fool. But as fate would have it, he's launching a long-awaited new book that very week. But that said, we've landed an absolutely stellar lineup of experts from across the investing world in the various areas. So we'll start with the whiskey because it's so far outside my area of competence and expertise. So over the course of the meetings that occurred in after we decided we were going for Investicon, I met the team at Teelings, and Teelings is the premier whiskey brand, I think, in the country. And I spoke with the most senior people in there, and they introduced me to their experts, and we're leading domain experts in collectible whiskey who, unlike the founder of a distillery, for example, are unbiased. So, we could have one of the people who run one of the world-known brands attend Investicon, but it would be more challenging for them to give you an unbiased answer as to what are the most collectible bottles and what are the most collectible caskets. So the first of the two speakers we have, and both of these speakers are Irish from Ireland, and the first one is a guy called Anthony Sheehy, who's the owner and co-founder of Irish Whiskey Auctions, and he is a serial entrepreneur in the whiskey world since he was a young fella, and he is an absolute authority and expert in all things whiskey. And the takeaway that I asked Anthony to deliver at Investicon was the top bottled whiskies to buy and hold for 10 years, which he can absolutely do in his sleep. And he's been an influencer in this industry for so long, everything from warehousing and all the logistics of whiskey to its promotion and its marketing and how to invest in it. And under his kind of stewardship, he founded a thing called the Whiskey Hub, which is expanded to include a whole bunch of brands like whiskyinvestment.com and whiskey.storage.com. But this guy lives and breathes whiskey. I'd say he's having the best life. Like, let alone is he an expert? Like, you don't become an expert by not doing it. So I think he's got the perfect excuse to wake up every morning and go, oh, it's a tough call, but it's the usual breakfast. And in it goes into the glass. So anyway, Anthony Sheehy is a visionary in Irish whiskey. And I know that as a matter of fact, because one of the most senior people in whiskey in the country told me so, and their word is to be believed. And by the way, I will be, or maybe one of us will be interviewing Anthony here in Stock Club in a few weeks' time, and we will get some great recommendations out of him on the podcast. He's a great conversationalist, and that's a podcast to look forward to. The other speaker on whiskey, whereas Anthony is going to tell us about the most collectible bottles, which are easy to buy in store. Mark McLaughlin, who's director of Irish Whiskey and the Dead Rabbit Group, is going to tell us which are the best barrels to buy in his opinion. And Mark is one of the world's leading whiskey strategists. He's nearly 20 years experience in the area of whiskey and all things to do with the asset that is whiskey. And he's currently, as I said, the director of Irish Whiskey for the Dead Rabbit Group. And you just speak to anyone who knows whiskey, and they'll say that Mark not only is a gentleman, but is a total expert on the subject. And he is going to tell us which barrels we should buy, which sounds like fun. You kind of like, I didn't buy a bottle, I bought a barrel. Everybody wants to say that, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm
That's
not
what I
going
was
to touch
thinking
it.
in my head as well when you talk about investing in whiskey. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, I own I own 10 barrels in a shed somewhere down in West Cork that won't be touched for 20 years. But when they do, we're in the money. Do you know?
Yeah. Drink all
Yeah.
the profit, as the
Yeah,
proverbial
it would
barman said.
be a great celebration once they're actually like bottled, you know what I mean? And sell whatever.
Mm.
Sell
I think you
99
see,
sell 99 of them and keep the 100 with the
but
profits.
I think it's a bit like stocks. You never actually touch the stock search. You know, you buy someone a share in Disney. Nobody touches a piece of paper and hands it to the next. Not anymore. And I think it's a bit like that with a casket of whiskey. Someone, it's down there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd
And we
hope.
want to make sure it's down there somewhere because there's a whole conversation there, I believe, where there was an awful lot of what's the word, fraud, where the same casket was being sold to multiple people. And when people presented themselves to see, where's my barrel, they're all showing the same barrel. I don't know the specifics, or at least conveniently don't know the specifics behind that, but we're going to make sure that when we're um, in this conversation at Investicon, that when you buy a casket, someone writes Mike O'Mahony on the side. Do not drink Mike O'Mahony's.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the whiskey experts.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where are we going to next? AI.
Yeah, well, to find a real expert in AI, I mean, it's a funny one because to find an expert in a moderately new technology, I think for most people, brand new technology, I had to do an awful lot of calls, and I ended up speaking with a member of our board who is one of the most senior guys in the Motley Fool, and he said, "Oh, there's only one answer to that, and it's Eric Bleeker, who's a guy who owns a company called 24/7 Wall Street and has an AI investors podcast, and." The takeaway he's going to give us at Investicon is the top 3 AI centric stocks to buy and hold throughout the AI industrial revolution. And we're going through an AI industrial revolution, whether or not you believe it or have noticed it. It is an absolute fact, as sure as night follows day. And we want to know what are the equivalent of Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft in the world of AI. And I just think that is going to be a really interesting conversation. So much so, he's going to be our guest on Stock Club next week. So I won't spoil that in any way whatsoever. But what I think people will know by the end of the episode next week is that with Eric Bleeker, we have a true expert in AI and all things to do with investing in it. And his last dozen calls on AI investing and what to buy have been just unbelievably accurate. So on the day, I'm going to ask him, what 3 AI assets would you buy right now if you had to go to that proverbial desert island? So the theme of Investicon is, the 3 most investable stocks, if you like, in the assets we're discussing for 2026 and beyond. But I'll be asking Eric, what would you buy now and put under your mattress if you had to go to a desert island for 20 years? Because that's the mentality that gave birth to the internet superheroes, the Amazons. And I told the story there a couple of weeks ago on Stock Club about how David Gardner recommended Amazon when it was like a $6 billion bookshop online, and me thinking that's nuts. And here we are. So we need a handful of those, I believe, to put in our folio and forget about.
Yeah. And then next up, we've got 2 different money managers who are both attached to the actual football match going on
That's
Saturday.
right.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Well, true. So Lois Cox, she is the former chief investment officer of Kansas State University, one of the 2 colleges that are clashing. She is a wonderful individual and has managed the endowment fund of that university. She recently retired. She was managing over $1 billion in assets before her retirement. So she would have a remarkably astute insight into preservation and growth of wealth. So as an investor, and my style, as everyone knows, is are looking for the crispers of tomorrow. But like hers is about, how do you make sure what you've got is safe, number one, and you grow it. And she is recognized all over America for her expertise. She's twice named as one of the Trusted Insights top 30 endowment CIOs, that's chief investment officers. She's been honored the length and breadth of America for her expertise, and she is a real expert and someone who will give us the more, I think, mature and rounded view of how one might go about just preserving wealth. So while she can't get very specific because of the terms of her specific employment, she will definitely have themes that she believes are very relevant for the years ahead for investors. Then we also have, from the other side, the other team, we've a former linebacker called Tim Cohen, and Tim is he comes from Lois is University of Kansas, and Tim is Iowa. Have to be very careful.
Don't
And
mix that up
Tim,
on the day, anyways. That's for
no
sure.
way, cannot mix up. So his teams are going to be on diversification, wealth preservation, and conservation, and managing risk during periods of increased market volatility. He's a wonderful storyteller. I've met him a few times on Zoom, and he brings complex concepts down to the most lovely, accessible stories. And he works for Schwab at the moment, and manages more money than God. He told me the number, but my pen ran out of ink drawn zeros. So he's kind of like, I was like, I don't even know if that's a number, Tim. So he was like, no, it is. It's a number. It's alien. So I was like, fine, good. Okay, you're our man. So Tim and Lois are joining us from the two
Yeah.
competing universities.
And I'm sure he might have a story or two from playing in the NFL as well.
Yeah. And I had a great chat with him, which was completely informed on my behalf by that thing I attended for the kickoff, the Aer Lingus College Classic, where they interviewed a former team manager of one of the biggest teams. I listened so closely. I know his name and his team, but I'm not telling you. And he was explaining to me the dynamics of the game, which I was able to regurgitate to Tim and sound like I was an expert, when in fact I am still watching YouTube instructional videos on the rules of American football. Do you know the rules, by the way, Mike?
Ish.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much every Irish person. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
and then that crumbles after that.
Okay, and then we're finishing up with the stock expert, our bread and butter. This would be where we kind of
Well, yeah, I
flourish.
mean, apart from you and me, of course, you, Mike, are one of the experts, but I reached out to a young uh, and brilliant investor by the name of Pieter Slegers, who has a Substack newsletter called Compounding Quality, which is actually the number one ranked stock subscription newsletter on Substack. Between Substack and X, he has 1 million followers, which include Jeff Bezos and Bill Ackman, and they retweet him and quote him, and he is an extremely smart a young man who is a former money manager, and now has, as I said, 1 million people who hang on his word. And he's formerly a professional in the financial management space from KU Leuven, and after 3 years in the industry, decided to follow his calling, as did I when I founded MyWallSt all those years ago. And he's now fully on Substack with Compounding Quality. And he is going to answer the question, your top 3 favorite stocks to buy and hold with the greatest chance of 10x growth over the long term. And I am going to make my usual pitch to find 3 stocks that I believe in the course of a human life will grow 100-fold. So we've got everything from the most conservative viewpoints from Lois and Tim, I expect, to the slightly less conservative of what barreled whiskies should one buy, what bottled whiskies should one buy, through to what AI stocks are and assets should you invest in, right through to the 10xers that Peter is going to pitch. And you and I are going to find our place in that conversation and pitch the stocks that we most believe in. And effectively what we've got now is an array of wonderful, wonderful brains in the investing world, who are going to have a really fun and exciting afternoon in possibly the most historic building, certainly the most historic stock exchange floor that you are likely to ever stand on. And as I said, 2 of the So, I mean, Tim and Lois can't get specific and say which stocks they're going to buy, but everyone will leave with around 18 or 20 actionable insights from the other six speakers. And should they act on those and buy 18 or a piece of those 18 assets across AI, whiskey, and of course stocks, it will be an amazing portfolio. But what, as I said, is most important to me is that it is a great day, enjoyable, connecting people in a wonderful place at a great time of year in Dublin, where the city is going to be buzzing for that weekend. And as just to wrap up, as I said, tickets are on investicon.ie, and there's a handful of early bird tickets there, and will be until they're not. I'm not sure when that stops, but there aren't too many of them.
Yeah. So that's Thursday, August 21st. And look, I don't need to sell them any more than you just have, but I've been to these events. They're brilliant. If you are an Irish investor, I think you can take so much from it just from meeting a like-minded community. Like I've seen those connections being made firsthand, and the value that people get from them, because sometimes in Ireland it's not as common to be involved in stocks or beyond property as an investor at all. Do you know what I mean? It's a relatively new thing, and it can feel like you're doing this alone a lot of the times. And this is one of those networking events that really eschews that fact, and kind of shows shows a like-minded community of investors that there is way more out there and way more opportunities to meet people, to find new investment opportunities, and everything else in between. So I think it's going to be a brilliant day. And yeah, Emmet, you said it there, investicon.ie for all the details. There is a early bird price going now, and that's it. Get yourself to it. Emmet, I think that's it for the show. I have nothing else to add on Investicon. Do you?
No, actually,
No.
that's it. We're going to, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to get some, I think, really great podcasts out of Peter is also appearing on the podcast of Compounding Quality. I think he's up in about 3 weeks. Next week, it's Eric.
Some teasers coming for it as well. Like,
yeah, exactly. So, exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, Emmet, thanks for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening in. We'll talk to you next week.